Today I would like to add another important piece to our Angular knowledge, something that is really important because without that piece of knowledge we can't really do interesting Angular applications. Today we are going to talk about how to access web services on servers or in the cloud or wherever they live. I want to tell you about HTTP client, about this module, and I would like to show you how to do HTTP GET and POST.
So the next lesson is history.
Yes?
Okay, thank you. That's next lesson.
So I'm going to show you how to do HTTP GET, POST, put, delete, and things like that. If we have that, we finally can build interesting stuff, because then we can combine logic that runs on the client and logic that runs on the server. That's the whole point, okay? In order to be able to demonstrate that to you, I have created a small web API which you can find in my GitHub repository. So, if I scroll in a little bit, in the folder Angular 0010 Demo API, you find the Node.js Demo API. I will use this Demo API now to demonstrate the principles, and I also have homework, not until next week, but the week after next week, so you have 2 weeks in order to work on this homework, and this homework will also be based on this Demo API. Next week, you will have the possibility to work on the homework during the sessions you normally had with me, because I will be absent. I will not be here next week, so you have 2 weeks to work on this homework plus my usual hours next week. Okay, so there will not be a theory lesson next week. If you have a different teacher, of course you will have a different teacher, you can tell them that you have an exercise from me on which you can work. And so use this time in order to work on the homework that I will give you at the end of this lesson, okay? Good. So let's quickly take a look at this Demo API in order to know what this Demo API is capable of doing. This Demo API can maintain a list of to-do items. Not a trivial list of to-do items, just strings, but a list of to-do items with assigned to persons and due date and things like that. Let me show you what we can do. You can simply, if you take a look at package.json, you can simply build the API using npm run build, and you can start the API using npm run start. Don't forget to do an npm install first. Okay, you have to fetch down the node packages from npm, and then you can use the start and the script. I already did that, and I would like to show you what this Demo HTTP API can do. First, we can get a list of people. We can do a get localhost 8080 API people, and we will get 2 persons, Adam and Eve. Then we can ask for a list of to-dos. As you can see it here, we can do a get to API/to-dos, and at the beginning we will get an empty array because there are no to-dos. Then, next step, we can do a post to add to-do items. So we can say add a to-do item with the description shopping, which is assigned to Eve. So let's do that. Okay, looks good. And as you can see here, every to-do item gets an ID. This is an automatically assigned ID, which is just an integer value that counts up. So the second to-do item gets ID 1. If we now query for the list of to-do items, we get a list of to-do items, shopping, Eve, of course. We can also try to add to-do items which are assigned to a person that is unknown or nobody. So let's do that one. If we do that, we will get an error. See that? Description unknown person. So if we try that, that will not work. Only Adam and Eve are available. We can query for specific to-do items using their ID. As you can see here, you can say get API to-dos 0, and what you will get back is, well, hard to guess, the to-do item with item 0. If you try to get a to-do item which does not exist, you will get a not found error, of course. You can update to-do items using patch. So by now, if we take a look at to-do item 0, we get description shopping. If we now do a patch for to-do item 0, where we set the description to homework, let's do that, and we query for the to-do item again, it is now homework. So the patch verb here can be used to update the description or the assigned to person for a to-do item. And finally, you have the possibility to delete to-do items. So if I try that, you see, you will get back no content. And if we now get a list of to-do items, we are back to the original state. We don't have any to-do items left. Okay? That's the functionality of this web API. It's really, really simple. It doesn't have a lot of functionality, but it's enough to play around with using an Angular application. Good? Good. Before we try to do that live, I would like to show you a little bit of theory. Not much theory, here it is. These are my slides, so you can find them on the internet. And the first thing that I would like to point out is this module. If you would like to interact with HTTP-based web APIs, and nowadays, as we discussed in the first semester, every major system on the internet, every cloud system, every cloud vendor offers an HTTP-based web API, you will need the HTTP client module. And in order to make it available, what you have to do is you have to do an import statement. Here at the beginning you see it. Import HTTP client module from Angular common HTTP. You can just copy this copy this line from my slides into your application, and that's the first thing. The next thing is, in the imports of the ng module, you have to explicitly import the HTTP client module. That makes the HTTP client available to your entire application. These two changes to the app module, as you can see it here, are absolutely necessary. If you forget them, your app will not work. So if you need to consume REST APIs, these two changes are mandatory at the very beginning. Without them, nothing works. I've added a link here to the Angular documentation. If you want to read more, do that. I will quickly show you how that looks like. There is a separate chapter for HTTP client. So if you really want to go dive into the details of how to use HTTP APIs, you can work through these examples or read that documentation. It's not absolutely necessary. For this course, everything you need to know, I will tell you. But if you use, for instance, Angular for your final year project or something like this, maybe it would be useful to spend a little bit of time working through this document. This document is also pretty useful when you prepare, for instance, for your exam, because you will find examples for post, delete, put, and of course get at the beginning of the document. So if you prepare at home or if you work on the homework and you need to do an HTTP post through Angular, it would be maybe a good idea to take a look at that example, and then you can copy some code from there. Why invent code on your own if there is already an example on the internet? Good? The next thing that you have to do in order to access an HTTP web API is you have to import HTTP client in your component. So the component that wants to access the HTTP API needs to have this HTTP client, and now take a close look here. This one. It is the constructor of the component class. You know what a constructor is, right? It is a method that is called as soon as the object, the instance of the class is created. And if you tell it here, hey Angular, whenever you create this component, please give me an HTTP client. It will give you the HTTP client if you imported the HTTP client module in your module. That mechanism is called dependency injection. Have you ever heard about that? Dependency injection? Yeah? This is dependency injection in Angular. You need to import the corresponding module, and once you imported the module, you can use all the so-called services. In this case, HTTP client is a service. You can just ask for the service in your constructor. Whatever you need, if you read the documentation, there are lots and lots and lots of services that Angular provides out of the box. So you just need to specify the service in the constructor, and Angular will care for creating an instance of the service and giving it to you through the constructor. If you forget to import the module, Angular will shout at you here. It will tell you, you asked for HTTP client, I have no idea what that is. And then you have to import the module, and then you can do dependency injection. Got it? Now, can anybody remember what this private here means? Yeah?
It is only known to that class.
What is it? Yes, but this is a constructor parameter.
The HTTP.
Okay, I think you mean the correct thing. The variable HTTP is privately accessible in all methods of the component, not only in the constructor, but only in this component. I think this is what you meant, right? Okay, exactly. So this is important to just say private, and when you need to access a web API, you will do something like this. See that one? HTTP client.get. Okay? This .people, people is an observable of something, we'll talk about that in a second. HTTP client.get. Now let's take a closer look at this get statement. On the right hand side of the get statement, you see the URL. In our case, we are getting a list of people from our demo API, exactly the API that we've seen a few minutes ago. But please note especially the type here. What you can specify in Angular, if you just want to get some data, you can specify an interface type. So if you know that every person has a name, take a look at the iPerson interface at the beginning of the script, you can specify an interface and then say, dear Angular, when you do the get, please assume that the objects that we get back are of this and that structure. And in that case, we get back an iPerson array, because we get back an array of person. Get it? Yeah? Good. So, let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. So, I'm not sure if that works with StackBliss. I have never tried it, and I would like to try it. Because my service is running locally. This is the reason why I'm not sure whether it works, but let's give it a try. We'll see. I'm in the mood of trying something. If you want to follow along, feel free to follow along. But you can also take a look at my video beamer and just follow along in your mind. First thing, we have to go to the app module TS, otherwise we don't have an HTTP client to build. So, let's go back to my slides and copy the HTTP client module. Here. And add it to the list of imports. HTTP client module. That's super important. Never forget that. You will definitely forget that. At some point in time, please remember that you can copy this from my slides, otherwise it doesn't work. Next one. In the app components TS, we can use a constructor and ask for the HTTP client. Now the system tells me, I have no idea what HTTP client is. Of course, again, we can take a look at my slides. We have to import it. By the way, this step is much easier if you don't do it in StackBliss, which will Studio Code will automatically recognize that HTTP client is a class from Angular and will add the import statement for you. Another advantage of using it with Visual Studio Code. But here in Stackless, we have to do that manually. Now we have an HTTP client available in our class. Good. Next one, let's go to the HTML page and do the following. Let's add a button and do a click handler, load people, something like this. So whenever the user clicks on this button, we would like to load people from our HTTP API. Good, let's do that. Load people. Now inside of load people we can say this dot, and now is the important part here. Because we have this private keyword up here, it is possible in the load people method to access the HTTP client in our load people method. Get the idea? So that's the whole point of this. So we say HTTP dot get, and then we can specify the type. If we don't have a type, we can say any. Of course, that's not very beautiful. So let's quickly go back to my demo API and take a look what comes back. See that one? We get an array of objects with a property name which is of type string. So let's rebuild this structure based on an interface. Interface person, and a person has a name which is a string. Has a name which is a string. And then we can say we will get back an person array. Finally, we need to specify the URL. Well, that's simple. We can copy it from here. Localhost blah people. I think it was people, right? Yes, it was people. Up until here, it shouldn't be any problem for you. You should understand everything. It's just a bunch of copy and paste and really trivial with the base knowledge that we worked through in the first semester. This should really be a piece of cake. But now it's getting interesting because this get method does not return just an person array. It gets back to you an observable of person array. What is an observable and what could that be? Have you ever heard about the observer pattern before in your other classes? I think I asked you that question before. Did you? Somebody? No? Observer, observable? No? Okay, can you guess from the context what an observable could be?
It gives you back an object where you can events when the object is updated, for example.
When something interesting changes with that object. Exactly. Observe means in German beobachten. So it is an object which you can observe. And you will get notified whenever something interesting happens with that object. What do you think? Why does an HTTP GET not return just a person array, but something strange as an observable which informs you whenever something interesting happens? What do you think? The solution to this question is it's an asynchronous operation. That's the important thing. That is how the browser works. Remember what we did in the first semester. Whenever you do an HTTP request, the browser takes away your control. You are no longer in control of the browser. The browser sends away the HTTP request, and in the meantime, you can do something useful, something else, display a nice video of a cat. And once the HTTP request is done, the browser will automatically inform you. And this is why observable here makes absolute sense. You will get back an object which is an observable means you get notified when the asynchronous operation has been done, right? Now, observable is a very, very powerful class in Angular. We could now spend hours and hours and hours diving deep into the concepts of observable. It's really a huge iceberg. You see the observable thing, and down there is a universe of possibilities. It's really complex. When I do real-world Angular trainings in companies, we partly spend a day or two just talking about observables. Of course, we cannot do that here. That would be way too much, and it would be, granted, kind of boring. So I will just give you, for the very first weeks of your Angular career, let's put it that way, a very simple way to consume an observable. Can you remember a little bit from the first semester, the thing with async, await, and promises, what I've told you before? Maybe you can remember when you consumed a RESTful web API with jQuery or with fetch API, we had this async await or this promise API with the .then method. Maybe you can remember it. I know it's already a few weeks in the past and you have a lot on your mind. But let me refresh your mind, because with async await, consuming observables in REST APIs becomes trivial. And later on we will talk about observable details. What you can do is you can say here at the end, to promise, and then you just say async wait and const people equals. Let me quickly restructure that for you, and then we take a look at this thing. I will give you a kind of cooking recipe. Just follow this recipe and it will work. Later on in this course, we will forget about cooking recipes. I don't like cooking recipes because it's stupidly typing some things, and when things go wrong, you can't help yourself. But at the moment, it's a good thing to get going. So, you do a to promise at the end, which converts the observable into a promise. We did that in the first semester. Just to refresh your mind, a promise is an object which promises you that it will have some results somewhere in the future. So it's also a way of asynchronous programming. It doesn't have the results yet, but you have a promise from the browser, hey, I do the web requests, and I promise you, at some point in the future, I can give you a list of persons. Good? So to promise is the first one, async in the method header, and await in front of the get, and everything is okay. And the beauty of this is that we now no longer have to deal with an observable or a promise or something. Now we have the result, the list of persons. Good? Good. So let's do that. We can say, somewhere here, people is a I person array. Let's do something like this, just an empty array at the beginning. And here we say this.people equals to await this.http.get. Let's write this. Get it? Yeah, question?
If we can, if we know already something about subscribe, and that could you also use that instead of get?
Absolutely. So for those of you who have already a little bit of knowledge in that area, what you could do is you could say, get rid of that one, and you could say .subscribe data goes to this.people equals data. Definitely, you can do that if you want. It does internally nearly the same. The big difference, if you want to know the difference, the big difference between this way of subscribing and async await is error handling. If you do it that way and an error appears, you don't have nice error handling. If you do an async await, automatically an exception will be thrown if something bad happens. So if you want to do exception handling here, you have to add additional code. If you want to have just an exception which you can catch with bright catch, then async await makes your life a little bit easier. But feel free to go that way if you already know about observables. Absolutely. Good. So, load people, and now it's getting interesting whether this works. Oh, of course. We're not done yet. We're not done yet. Here is the load people stuff, and well, I already have the click here. Let me check. So, insert log. Here are people. And yes, it already works, but I didn't display the result. Because now we have this .people, but we don't do any kind of data binding. So now we need to display the list of persons, the people. Let's do it under the list item. Quick repetition. How do you do a repeating thing in Angular? Can you remember? Yes, of course you can. Star engine 4. Let person of people person dot name. And if everything works out nicely, we should get Adam and Eve, which we don't. Why? Oh. What did I do wrong? Oh my god, I forgot this one. Sorry, just one little character mistyped. Bad things happen. Let's see. Oh my god. I forgot something else. Yes, it should be. It was on the wrong place. Now it looks good. See it? If we now take a look at the network tab, let's quickly clear that. If we say load people, let me zoom in a little bit here, then we will see here that Adam and Eve are returned by an HTTP request, which was sent by Angular. This is the request that we initiated using Angular. Get the idea? Let's quickly summarize that again. App module, HTTP client module, app components, private HTTP. If you want to execute the method, just do this, async await call to give it the data type, and use it to promise at the moment. In a few weeks, we'll talk about RxJS, and then we'll tell you a lot about observables, and we can talk more about the observables here. Questions so far? You definitely need to remember that. That will definitely be part of your exam. Okay, so practice that because we will need that often. Cool, so this works. Now we have a little bit of time left, so let's try to also get a list of the to-do items. And now I will type, but I will ask you what to do. So, I want to see a list of to-do items. Let's just display a list of the descriptions of the to-do items. What should I do? What are the first steps? Yep.
Create a new interface.
Create a new interface. Good. Let's call it interface I-to-do item. It has a number, the ID. It has a description, the string. And it has a assigned to, which is a string person. Good. Next one.
Change the HTML file.
Change the HTML file. What should we add? Maybe another button? Yeah, of course, we'll do another button just to make it really obvious. Let's call it load to-dos. Load to-dos. Good. Next one. What's the next step? Yeah?
Have a look at what the code looks like in the...
Good. Yeah, we can do that. It looks like that. Very simple, just the API to-dos. And if we take a look what comes back, an empty array. And down there, you see the structure that will come back once we have some arrays. Okay, next one. What else can we do? What's the next step? It's obvious, isn't it? Yeah?
implement the load to-dos.
Thank you. So, I think it's a good idea to just copy the load people, load to-dos, change it to to-do. Okay. Of course, it's no longer an I person, it's now an I to-do item. It's the same, and we cannot assign it to people, but we have to assign it to to-dos. I to-dos, I to-do item array, sorry, and here we say to-dos. Good? Last step, well, again, it's kind of obvious. Just copy the resulting unordered list item of to-dos, and we say item dot this. Shouldn't be any problem, right? It was just a quick go through to exercise. Load to-dos. Oh, we get an exception. Why do we get an exception here? To-dos. Oh, I wrote to-do, right? Yeah, that was my mistake. Let's try again. Much better. We now have an empty array, and therefore we don't see anything, but this seems to be correct. Okay, now we would like to do something that we haven't done yet. We would like to add a to-do item. We don't let the user enter the data, we just add a random data. So what I would like to do, if you want to follow along, please copy the button and say add demo data. So we add, sorry, forgot to assign something. Add demo data. Let's do a method here. Async add demo data. And this time we say this.htp dot, and now take a look what we have here. These methods should look similar to you. Not similar, known to you. I mean, we have get, we have put, we have patch, we have delete. So these are the HTTP verbs that we can use to send it to an HTTP server, to a web server. Let me quickly close the blinds, outer blinds. I think there is too much wind. Which HTTP verb should we use to insert data? Remember the first semester? Yeah, post, good. Yeah, that's you. Do post. So let's see what post takes as a parameter. Post takes a parameter. First one is the URL, and the second one is the body. So what we can do is we can just say, okay, post something to the to-dos. Here it is. And secondly, just pass in an object, and we can copy that object from my demo request here. Get the idea? Let's try it. Boop, boop. What will post return? Again, an observable. So what do we have to do currently without no deeper knowledge about observables? Well, we say to promise, and we say await. Got it? And once we inserted the record, we can also do this load to-dos in order to refresh the list of to-dos. What's going on here? Ah, I switched to English. I'm sorry. And do it await. Why do we do it await, by the way? Well, it doesn't make sense to do await. Well, it would make sense, but that's a detail. Let's do just the load to-dos. Let's give it a try. So, if we say load to-dos, we will get an empty array, as you can see here. So now let's clear the result here and say add demo data. And what we now see here is that we sent an HTTP post to our to-do item API, and we got back a created result. That means we have successfully inserted a row, and now the second call to do really responded with a meaningful result, with a to-do item, shopping, assigned to Eve, and now we have on the left-hand side a result. So adding something to a list is really a very simple thing to do. We can just say HTTP post. Difficult? No, it isn't, right? So we can click again, add demo data, add demo data, add demo data, and we add a bunch of shopping elements. Finally, to make this demo complete, I would like to have the possibility to delete an item. We know that the API supports that. If we take a look down there, you will see that, where is it? Here, we have delete to-do item. So if we just say to-do 0, we can't delete an item. So what could we do? Well, the simplest thing is to add a delete button to each item. So here in the list, we just say button and use an X as a kind of symbol to delete data. So if we add something, you see, we now have an X, and if we click on this button, we would like to delete this shopping item from the web API. For that, we say click delete item. The question is, which item? Can we somehow, or do we somehow know here the ID of the item to delete? Well, of course. It's item.id. Get it? Oh. Last but not least, implement the method. Let's copy one that is already there. I think I called it delete item. Okay. Let's go for HTTP delete. And this one should be called delete item. Here, I have to specify the ID of the to-do. So let's say ID number. This input parameter comes in because here we pass in the item's ID. Let's make this a template string. Remember the first semester, we had TypeScript template strings. There we can use these curly braces and just say add the ID like that. Can you remember from the first semester? If you can't, this is a good repetition. Otherwise, look up the template strings in my material in my slides. And at the end, we just say again load to-dos to refresh the list. Get the idea? Good. So, save it. And let's take a look. Currently we have a bunch of shopping elements, and now we can click on it and delete them until we have no one left. Add one, delete one, add one, delete one. Works like a charm. And if you want to take a look, you will see that we really did an, where is it here, HTTP delete with the specified ID, and we got back no content, and this is the correct result value. Every result value that is in the 200 range means okay. The system just didn't find anything to return, therefore it says no content. But 204 is perfectly fine. Chrome is also indicating that by displaying a green button here, a green dot here. So now we have a really nice example for HTTP GET, HTTP POST, and HTTP DELETE. And if you follow this simple cooking recipe to I forgot the semicolon here. To promise async await, then it's really, really simple to consume web APIs in Angular. You don't need to worry about fetch API and jQuery and all this strange stuff that we had to do in the first semester. Now we have a ready-made service that we can just inject and use it. One word of warning here, in practice, in real life, nobody uses it like that directly. But what you do instead is you are writing your own service that encapsulates the data access. We'll talk about that in a few weeks. But currently, that's fine. But don't go out and tell everybody this is how you do it, because then they will tell you you're writing spaghetti code, and they are right. But currently, we are fine with spaghetti. As long as we are at the beginner level, spaghetti code is okay. Good. Any questions so far? Make sense? Nice. Now I have a homework for you. The homework is, of course, in a classroom. I have a classroom link for you. GitHub Classroom. Here we are, and here it is. Got the invitation link. I can go here. This is the IDE. Maybe somebody could put it in the class's Slack, or so that everybody has it. Good? Hmm? The first one is a 0, and the last one, the second last one is an O. Like omega. Hmm? And the second one, oh, that's a hard one. Huh? A small L? Okay, thank you. You already found it out. So, what is this sample all about? Let me quickly show you that. This sample is about the to-do list. Here you have again a summary of the sample API, but I showed you the sample API in the last hour. And what I want to have from you is I want to have an Angular app on which I can display a list of to-do items. I would like to be able to filter the to-do items so that I only see items that are undone. What does undone mean? You can also specify a done flag. You see that one? Once you have completed an item, you can send a patch with the to-do item and set done to true. And if you did that, you will get done true. So, I would like to have the possibility, maybe a checkbox that says only show undone items, and then you get a list of items and you have to filter them, only display the undone. I like to have another filter, only the ones that are assigned to me. Let's assume I'm Eve. I only want to see the undone to-do items for Eve. It's another thing. Yeah, of course, combine these filters, that doesn't. I would like to be able to add a new to-do item, and I would like to edit a to-do item. And finally, I would like to delete a to-do item. Well, we already did that one today in the lesson, so you can just use the code that we just wrote. So this is not complex. This should be really doable for everybody. You have 2 weeks of time. Next week, you have all the lessons here. This shouldn't be a problem. This is the minimum that you have to know in order to pass the next exam. Okay? This is the absolute minimum. We will take a look in 2 weeks when we'll get back. If you have questions, send me a GitHub request, GitHub issues, or ask your colleagues. I'm definitely sure together you will be able to overcome any problems that you have here. Now, of course, for those of you who want to go the extra mile, I have 2 possibilities for extra points. The first one, I invite you, this is not mandatory, this is optional, I invite you to give Angular Material a try. Angular Material is a really nice library with which you can style your application in a very nice way. So the application looks like an Angular application, a Material application, which is Android essentially. To give you a hint here, Angular Material contains a guide which says getting started. You should work through it, and with that, it should be possible to add Angular Material to your app. I see some heads nodding here, so I assume that some of you have already done that. So if you have questions, you can ask your colleagues or send me some questions. The last one is a little bit tricky. I admit that. I would like you to add a due date, Fälligkeitsdatum. You have a question?
Is it possible to install the Angular material and state this?
I think so. I don't see a reason why not. You have to try it. I never tried it before. But please, the next word in the next line is sufficient. Using stack-bliss for this example is not sufficient. You know why I said that? In the exam later on, you will need to use your local computer. And I would like to force you to practice that locally, because otherwise, I know you. You will try it with Visual Studio Code the first time during the exam. And you should do that. So that's the only thing. But that's an interesting thing. Has anybody tried that? Stack-bliss with Angular material? Yeah? And does it work? Okay, so you try it. Okay, thank you. The last one is a little bit tricky, I admit. You have to add a due date. For that, you have to add things to the web API. So you have to somehow bury out the knowledge from the first semester and take a look in the implementation of the web API, add a new field, due date, use the Angular Materials date picker, and add the due date to your application. This is one I think, if you invest a little bit of time with the help of your colleagues, it should be pretty easy to gather this extra point. This one is not so easy. If you want to really go the extra mile and you want to dive a little bit more deeper into the whole thing, date handling is not the most trivial thing in Angular. Give it a try. It's an invitation. It's optional. Good. Any questions so far? No? Nice. Then we can now do much more interesting examples because we know a little bit of data binding, we know components, and now we have the possibility to access business logic on the web. We can access web APIs. You can now, if you want, build much more interesting applications by accessing public web APIs of, I don't know, SoundCloud, Deezer, Office 365, Google, Facebook, whatever, and then you can really use the power of Angular to build great applications. Okay? We are done for today. Thank you very much. See you in 2 weeks.